I generally have an understanding, and I have a real understanding of how in a hopeless society, how substance and substance dependence is often that answer for many people. I have a deep empathy for people who have to stand at intersections, sometimes even with their children, to get some sort of arm. I also have a decent enough knowledge to know that the bonds between parent and child are important. And just because a family is experiencing poverty does not necessarily mean that a state should intervene and take a child away from that bond of particularly mother and child, because let's be honest, we don't have enough mother and child places of safety. So I'm generally empathetic to many of the circumstances that people find themselves in. But I have very little tolerance for people who deliberately put their children in harm's way, who deliberately make them vulnerable. And it was that video of a nuclear mother in Joburg who's now been arrested after this video surfaced of her giving a 4-year-old son a mandrax pipe to smoke. It's a disgusting video. We have on this radio station been asked many times. There's a mother at an intersection who is a mother living in an informal settlement underneath the unfinished bridge. Can we get social development to assist? And we've answered this question. Social development does not want to break up mother and child pairings. We also, the case of Jocelyn Smith, who, as we heard in court, lived in a deeply depressive community and society where it was admitted that her mother was dependent on drugs. So the question is asked, at what point does the state, what does the South African law say about the circumstances in which a child can legally be removed from their parent or guardian? And I'm very happy to say that in the nuclear incident, there was intervention by the JMPD, who put them in the care of the South African Police Child Protection Unit. Dr. Joan Van Niekerk joins me now. She is a child rights and child protection consultant. Good morning, Joan. Really appreciate your time. Let's first talk about the nuclear incident. That was disgusting. That was, you could not excuse any of that behavior of a mother deliberately giving a 4-year-old child mandrax to smoke, Joan.
Totally inexcusable and horrifying. The consequences for a child of that age, well, they are life-changing. Obviously, if the child lives in a drug-infused atmosphere in which he is not just asked to smoke the pipe, but exposed to mother and her friends or father. I'm not sure if there were 3 people present, so there was a failure on the part of the other 2 to protect the child. That child will enter the schooling system addicted, unable to concentrate, unable to benefit from schooling. There are so many lifelong consequences, some of which we don't even know for sure, because obviously research into drug-addicted children is quite scarce, simply because thankfully it's something we do not come across frequently.
Yeah. Clearly, there may be many children in South Africa who may not be handed drugs directly by their parents, but who live in households where they may be exposed to drug use and therefore a desensitization when it comes to substances. What does the South African law say about, firstly, the reporting of these situations, these circumstances, and what is the responsibility of a Department of Social Development or the South African Police Service to respond to those situations?
Well, dealing with the first question first, they have a responsibility. If a child is in need of care, the child should be assessed, the living circumstances should be assessed, and in a case where a child has been blatantly abused in this way, because it is child abuse, the mother's actions, the child should be immediately removed. So the law is quite clear. Begging, using a child to beg, begging of children is illegal in terms of the Children's Act, and it's a form of exploitation. And indeed, the child who was smoking the pipe in that video, that appalling video, is also being exploited. I mean, if you look at the adults find it most amusing. And unfortunately, in South Africa, parents are not sufficiently aware that no drug should be given to a child, including alcohol. And again, sometimes children are given these substances because then the behavior of the child provides amusement to the adults. That is abuse. Begging, using a child to beg is exploitation of a child.
What about, and I'm not necessarily equating poverty with substance abuse, but these issues are often intertwined. We have dealt with a situation on our radio station where someone who worked in an office building would see and look down on an area where there was an encampment, and they could see people using substance, and there was a young child. We got in touch with Department of Social Development, who then sent out someone. But the response was, we cannot necessarily make a judgment here, but also we cannot simply just remove a child without giving the mother assistance. And in a reality, in the public sector, where there are so few mother and child facilities, what then is the answer of taking children out of vulnerable situations, but also helping mothers here, Joan?
Well, unfortunately, and I know that we keep on saying this, but it's actually true, there are not enough resources. There are shelters for women, and they will accept children, but unfortunately, the mother has to be willing to stay there, and sadly, many mothers are not. So then the mother leaves the shelter with the child, and the whole scenario carries on. It is a lack of resources, it is a lack of care, and we do have to challenge our government to provide more resources for this kind of situation where a mother is living in very poor circumstances with a child, and the care of the child is open to question. It's very difficult. Our social workers, I have to be honest, in both government and private organizations like our child welfares, are strapped for resources. And it is so frustrating to work in this field and to keep on appealing to our Treasury to make sure that more resources are allocated to children. But having said that, sometimes politicians who have no experience in the field of welfare get into decision-making positions and make decisions that are not adequate. And here I want to mention, and I know I will not be popular for this, but that's not my job to be popular. Our Minister of Social Development, in giving her budget speech, did not once mention children. And that is very concerning, because not mentioning children when she is in that kind of position means that they're not going to be given enough attention in this present budget.
Dr. Joan Van Niekerk, really appreciate your time. Child rights and child protection consultant. Just on our TV screens right now, the headline: the mother appears in court today. The mother who quite deliberately on a video is seen giving a mandrax pipe to her 4-year-old son to smoke.